Looking ahead, challenges and opportunities in the changing world. Welcome to Talking Economics, a podcast by the Center for Economic Research and Graduate Education, Economics Institute. Family economics and related topics, such as the length of parental leave, mother's career progression, or the broader issue of the gender wage gap, are the highlights we will be discussing today with our guest, Barbara Pertold-Gebicka. Barbara is a CERGE-EI alumna and an assistant professor at the Institute of Economic Studies, Faculty of Social Sciences, Charles University. Her research interests evolve around labor economics, family economics, economics of education, and other fields of applied microeconometrics. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Basha, before we start talking about your research and insight, I would like to ask you to clarify the motivation behind it. In my experience, the research related to family economics, especially some of its topics like motherhood planning, is often looked upon as social engineering, with questions like, why are you trying to interfere with the decisions of parents and mothers? Are you trying to prescribe some economically optimal solutions? Can you please clarify what is this research, and any research for that matter, actually aiming for?
Well, thanks for this very nice introductory question. I also come across these issues a lot, but I think it's important to say that research is not about prescribing anything. It's about understanding the behavior of people given the setup in which they live. And family economics, gender economics is not an exception here. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to understand how people behave in the political and social context that they live in. So, for example, this could be used then for understanding what would be the consequences of some policy. What are the motivation? What is the motivation for people when they make decisions, for example, concerning parenthood? What are the consequences for the children, for the families, for the individuals? So we are not prescribing anything. We are understanding how people act in a given context.
Amazing. And so now let's talk about your insights into the impact of childcare leave policies on the decision-making of families. Czech Republic is well known for its extensive parental leave. In your research, you explore the consequences of this on women's career.
Yes. So I'm not sure if it is about the behavior of the families, but it's rather the outcome of, or the intersection of behavior of the individual family and the firms at the market, right? The interactions of everything. So in the Czech Republic, we have very long parental leave, which is 3 to 4 years, which is the longest in Europe. And this has some consequences for mothers who are usually the ones who take those leaves. When we look at their labor market career, we can see that women, when they have children, they usually leave labor market for 3 years. When they have one child, if they have more children, they usually do not go back to employment or move back to employment for a very short time, which means that the break in employment is quite long, 6 or 7 years, which has some consequences. And in one of my papers, I was analyzing this. I was trying to see what is the price for that setup, and by comparing the earlier case before 2008, when the parental leave was basically 4 years, with the situation after a reform, which shortened the baseline leave setup to 3 years, I could see that mothers who were under the longer setup, they were employed in jobs with lower occupational positions, in jobs that offer lower wages. Just like this, I'm not saying which situation is better. It's just one of the information that we have to take into account or might take into account when designing the leaves. So when the leaves are longer, then mothers, even several years after the leave, they are still working at lower position.
So we can summarize that it has negative impact on their career. But there was earlier research which showed positive effect in other countries, right? So can you clarify the difference?
Yes. So this is often brought up in discussions about the parental leave length. That in some other countries, for example, for the U.S., earlier research found that introduction of parental leave actually improved women's situation on the labor market. But we have to take into account the context in which this other analyses were done. So, for example, for the U.S., the analysis was on the introduction of leave. So we compare the situation with no parental leave to the situation with some relatively short parental leave, which comes together with job protection. Or in other countries, the research was comparing, for example, 12 weeks long leave with an extension to half a year or 1 year, which again showed a positive impact. This is because women or families like or might prefer being with their children when they are still so small. So without a parental leave, mothers simply chose to exit employment, exit the labor market, and they had no formal attachment with the employer. So after the child became a bit older, let's say 1 or 1.5 years, because that's the usual time when in the Western economies mothers go back to work, they had to look for a job again from scratch, which had some negative effects on them. With introduction of leave that comes with job protection, they could simply take a leave and then when the child is older, go back to the same employer. In the Czech Republic, we are on the other extreme, where the leave is very long. So what we are comparing is a 3 years long leave with a 4 years long leave. If both come with job protection, then in each situation, the mothers don't lose a labor market attachment in a sense that they are able to go back to the same employer. But now we have to look at the situation from the point of view of employers. When they have an employee who is absent from work for such a long time, which is several years, that employer is no longer in line with what is going in the firm. So they might consider not employing this person on the same position. They might consider offering that person a lower position. They might not be that willing to have that person again in comparison to a person who was employed continuously or who was on leave for, let's say, 1-2 years, but not 4.
Is there any research on actually the perception of employers on this? So do they behave differently towards women, the different lengths of parental leave or...
Yes, so there is some research here. So again, we can look at experiences from the Western economies, or we can look at experiences from the Czech Republic, which are a bit different because of this different system of parental leaves. So what we observe in the Western economies is that generally women or employers or workers who have considerable gaps in employment are considered as somehow worse than continuously employed workers because of what is called a human capital depreciation. What we observe in the Czech Republic is that there is a very strong social norm of women being at home with their children up to the age of 3. In one of my research with Vojta Bartoš, we investigated how employers view job applications from women of 2, 3, 4-year-old children. And we see a big gap, a big jump in their perception when we compare women on 2 or 2.5-year-old children with women of children above 3, with employers being much more likely to employ mothers of older children, that is, women who have longer break in employment, but they have a child in the age that is socially acceptable to be separated from the mother.
So is it about social norm, or is it about also the availability of childcare and the fact that if you have a child which is 3 years old, you very likely have a kindergarten for them, whereas if you have a younger one, it probably requires more flexibility on the side of the mother?
This might be driven by childcare availability, but at the same time, we explicitly ran a survey among human resource managers, where they indicated social norms as one of the reasons behind not willing to employ mothers of younger children.
Interesting. Speaking about social norms, and it's in general known that it's better for women to have kids at a younger age, yet we know that this age is increasing for various reasons. Is there any research suggesting what are the consequences of these longer parental leaves on like whether there is a difference between younger women and older women?
Yes, there is a lot of research on that. It also depends on the context of the country. So as I said earlier, having a child, so when we look from the point of view of the labor market, so let me stress that once again, because when one assesses the benefits and the costs and benefits of parental leave, we of course should not look only on the labor market, but in my research, I concentrate on that part. So when we look from the point of view of the labor market, having a child is associated with a career break, that is during the maternity and parental leave, and might be also associated with some decreased effort devoted to work afterwards. During this labor market break that is associated with parental leave, women or men, whoever takes the leave, might lose some of their labor market skills. That's what we call human capital depreciation. And that might be related to some decreased earnings in the labor market after they go back. On the other hand, it also depends how much skills and what skills have been built before that break. So if that break is short, then the depreciation is not that big. If the break is long, then there might be quite extensive human capital depreciation. And that's actually what we observe in the research done for the Czech Republic, that it seems that mothers, when they return to the job market after having children, they start their career from the very beginning, as if they were fresh graduates, basically. While in the Western countries, where the parental leaves are shorter, mothers start again or go back to the career that has been built before having children. So, coming back to your question, it seems more optimal for mothers who are interested in pursuing a career to have children later. So in the Western economy, so they first build a career, then have children, and then return to the already built career. In the Czech Republic, it seems to be the other way around. So if we look at it from the point of view of labor market earnings, then it's basically might be better to have children early and then build a career after maternity, because anyway, it's like starting the career from scratch.
Mm-hmm. So you're starting the career twice, actually.
That's what we observe in the Czech Republic.
Mm-hmm. This is probably one of the explanations for the existence of the gender wage gap here in the Czech Republic, or one of the reasons that there are differences in the wages.
Yes, the gender wage gap in the Czech Republic is quite large, and long parental leave is one of the reasons for that. And generally, the social norms putting all the burden related to childcare on women is also adding to that.
We know, and I think it's been well established, that combining childcare and work is a big issue. But in your work, you also focus on the role of job flexibility on the gender wage gap. So can you maybe speak about that?
Yes, sure. So I already mentioned that having children is doing two things. One is the career break, and second is different work style or lifestyle once having children. So with increasing size of the household, there is also much more household work, which is predominantly done by women, which also means that they are not able, or we are not able, to devote so much effort to the labor market. So the optimal behavior for a woman who wants to devote some of her time to family, to the household, but at the same time be active in the labor market is to work part-time, is to work with flexible hours, is to have an employment that could be combined with the other duties. Which is not always possible. So, for example, the Czech Republic is a country with a very low prevalence of part-time jobs. So often when we talk about mother's employment, it's a discussion about no employment or full-time employment. While all the space in between is basically not considered, which might be another reason for the preference for such long parental leaves, which have, as we said earlier, their consequences. Here, I do some research using the data from Denmark, which allows us to follow women throughout their life. So observe them before they have children and after they have children. And what we observe is that women tend to allocate to jobs, to firms that are more flexible, that allow them, let's say, leaving at 3 p.m. to pick up the child from the kindergarten and potentially finish the work in the evening. These jobs are preferred to jobs that are inflexible. In other words, you either work from 9 to 5 or not work at all.
What is the observed impact on the gender wage gap?
It's basically it's positive in a sense that it improves the situation. If such jobs, if flexible jobs are available, it improves the situation of women. There is a very important research by Claudia Goldin, who defined or pointed towards the existence of something what is called convex jobs. That means jobs in which the pay per hour is non-linear in the hours devoted to work. So if somebody works full-time, 8 hours a day, and we compare this to the person who works part-time, the part-time person would not earn half of the money, but less. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, a person who works more than full-time, who works overtime, would be rewarded also much more than just adding one more hour. So the existence of such jobs, of such convex remuneration, is bad for people who want to work part-time. Because then the cost of reducing the working hours is quite high. We can then compare such jobs to another set of jobs that reward workers exactly according to how many hours they work. And what Claudia Goldin is observing, and also other people following in this field of research, they observe that mothers tend to concentrate in jobs with this linear rewarding, where they can flexibly adjust the number of hours without considering that fewer hours would mean much lower earnings.
Disproportionately lower than the other one. Can you distinguish these kind of jobs, like in real world? What types of jobs are of one nature and what are of the other?
So the simplest example, and here I will again borrow from Claudia Goldin, are lawyers, and then different jobs that lawyers can do. So lawyers who work in a big law company that is leading all these cases, they are usually non-linearly rewarded. So the more you work, the even more you earn. On the other hand, if someone works as a legal advisor in some organization, especially if it is a public organization, they are usually rewarded according to the number of hours they work. So this is one of the textbook examples here. An example of convex and linear jobs can be also taken to the countries where we have large public sector. And it's often the case that public sector employees are rewarded according to some prescribed tables, which basically means that they are paid according to how many hours they work, how many years they have served, and what education they have. And this would make those jobs linear in the language of Claudia Goldin. On the other hand, private sector jobs are more often convex jobs. And we explore this situation when analyzing the situation of mothers in Denmark, where we see that women sort into public sector actually even before having children. And once they give birth to a child, they are much more likely to stay in these public sector jobs, even though on average public sector pays less than private sector. We still observe them sorting there. And at the first sight, it might appear that this is punishing them, that they might be better if working in the private sector, because that's the sector that pays higher wages. But actually what we show is that if mothers were working in the private sector, they would be actually punished much more, because they will have to reduce working hours. And for that, because of this convex job scheme, they would be punished. So in the end, the earnings would be actually lower than what they earn in the public sector.
Speaking of flexibility, what is it now? 4 years ago, we experienced the pandemic of COVID-19. And that has taught us some flexibility, right? So has the situation in the market changed? Is there any research already on this topic or on the impact of the changes, or is it too early because there is no data?
It was a huge shock, and I would say a positive shock to the functioning of the labor market. So we all learned that a lot of work can be done from home, can be done remotely, without the need of regular travel to the workplace, without the need of often business travels. And this has a potential to improve women or mothers in special situation in the labor market because of all the reasons that we've discussed earlier, because it introduces a lot of flexibility. A simple example is that by working from home, we save time on traveling, on commuting to work. So a mother who earlier had to work 6 hours a day to have enough time for the children and for commuting now can work 7 or 8 hours a day with having exactly the same amount of time for family. So I have done some research on that using the data from the United States because they basically collect data in almost real time. So we can already observe that there is much more working from home in the US than there was before the pandemics. So before the pandemics, roughly 5% of all working hours were done from home. During the pandemic, this increased to almost like 50%. And after the pandemic, it did not go back to this 5%, but it stayed at something between 25 and 30%, which is a lot. And this helps secondary earners like women. This helps mothers. This helps all those people who require some labor flexibility. One of the channels is what I already said, that these people can now devote more time to work with having exactly the same amount of time left for the household. The other channel is that thanks to the ability to work remotely, thanks to the ability to conduct meetings remotely, so there is not such a big pressure on business travel, mothers can apply to a broader set of jobs. So before, mothers didn't want to take jobs that require a lot of traveling because they wanted to spend the time with their children. Nowadays, after the COVID experience, there is much less business travel. A lot of meetings can be conducted online, which means that some of the jobs, which are usually high-paying jobs that were not available for mothers before, are available for them now, allowing them to earn more money.
Mm-hmm. So therefore, the gender wage gap has decreased.
Therefore, the gender wage gap, as we observe, has slightly decreased. With more data coming in, I hope to see a further decrease, but that's to be investigated. And I know that my colleagues are doing something similar for the Czech Republic, so let's see what comes out from that.
This is a good time for us to end, and we can look forward to talking to you in the future about the upcoming results. Thank you, Basia, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.